Right. This is not the workshop to try and get some orderly attention, is it? It's like herding cats. It would have been perfect for this moment. So I just want to say thank you for coming to speak to us today. Hopefully they'll all be a little bit quiet so they can listen.
Thank you.
And you are live to the world.
Welcome. Let me get the title right. It's an awesome title. Taxonomy and diversity. Credits to the title. I did love it. I think it's appropriate. It is. It's getting me into okay. It's much better than my working title, which is caregiver. That's plain little stuff. So, yeah. I'm out, and I'm out. My lovely assistant here, she's an hot dogs. She's my little princess, consultant. It's in progress. Jeanette's handing out colour sheets and pencils. Feel free to use them. I find I can actively listen better while doing something, so I love it. Feel free to enter on the headspace if you want. It's all great. So, in that way, I'd like to do this. Once upon a time, there was a princess who wanted nothing more than to find an apple. She looked high, she looked low. She looked in scary places, far off places, always lived in success. She met lots of people. Pretty much definitely. In a kingdom far, far away, there's a man. He liked to help people. His job was helping people. His hobby was helping people. Yeah. One day, found an amazing little lady. He started to open his eyes and his mind. He saw some of the things she needed mentally, physically, and they helped each other. They went all over the country and met some amazing people. Then one day, Daddy went into a tower, found a little princess. Like magic, Princess met her daddy in care after her. Our fairy tale is complete. We've learned a lot along the way. And we'll continue to learn from an amazing community. This workshop is my best adequate way to make assistance and communicate some of the things that we've learned, we share. I'm open, people can ask questions. I am not legal authority, I am not police. I am very anti-obedience and police mindsets, like I say. What makes it beautiful to me is diversity and inclusion. Everyone's opinion is valid and expressed. There is a lot of terminology associated with littles and the wider caregiver dynamic. It was quite daunting to me. I was very, very fortunate. my first encounter with someone very experienced and very patient and very sharing. I learned from my son.
So do you think you could effectively learn how, well, not how to be a parent, but do you think that it's effective to learn from the bottom type in that relationship? Do you think it's something that can be taught even though it's partly innate?
I think very much so. One caveat. If you kind of person who struggle and then a power dynamic to learn from the bottom, probably not. Caregiving is probably not the right fit, because for me that's where the beauty is. It's very interactive community. You're reacting. It doesn't mean it isn't there in other yes dynamics, but I think there is different emphasis. I think practically a trigger warning when people say natural bond, but there are personality types. For me, like exercises to a caregiver role, as part of our journey, we help to the people, not fully into the kink world necessarily. There's a lot of baggage. I went through it myself. I struggled with it, and now I think it's the most beautiful thing in the world. I'm proud. There's a lot of misconceptions and prejudice. It seems weird when you think about it. It's quite hard and extreme things, more accepted. So, let's start with habitat trade. A little. There's a few terms that we will go through. They get complicated. A little is someone who likes to role play being a younger age than the biological age. A little is, I don't like putting age boundaries or boundaries on it. So we ask questions where typically you get decide what's that. Set of behaviours you will see someone categorise themselves as activity. On the younger side, it's adult baby, tends to be 0 to 4, and this is where a lot of the contemplation comes in. A little as an adult baby, there are multiple headspaces between adult baby and little. Could progress to different ages. They are not mutually exclusive. Again, one of the things I like is it complements and in addition to all the other levels. Just because you're a little doesn't mean you can't be a scientist. Just for that's people. So adult babies typically a younger age when they regress. Again, an adult baby may or may not wear nappies or as you see in most of the online. There's a lot of Americans that nappy wearing is not part and parcel, absolutely, it's not all of it. It's like most things. Pacifiers, just use pacifiers, make it an adult baby, you might just like it. Or fixation is common. The term that will be associated with adult babies is ADPL, adult baby. Americans. Then on the other side of the spectrum, you hear it less commonly, but valid as middles. That people go to that age and typically age play someone in the teenage years or pre-teen within the gap. It's important to understand and communicate. This is role play in central actions. You can't safely engage someone who isn't making consent. So straight away address where a lot of the baggage comes from. People conflated pedophilia, and it absolutely isn't. And C is very diligent trying to root out those people because they are very, very toxic and they're not the kind of people this dynamic. Another one that commonly comes up, and I don't know whether this is American centric or not, but I certainly encountered this in this country. Some people, when you talk about age play or age player, there's an assumption that you're referencing sexual or kink focus. For others, age play is more of a portmanteau term, an overarching term for caregiver dynamic. When I use it, it's an overarching term. When you age play, it could be big and pure headspace, lots and lots of quality add in there. It could be nothing else other than that role play and have a fully pure headspace. It can be sexual, and it can be role impact play and punishment. It can be interesting to see because nowadays it isn't socially accepted to smack children, but that's not quite this. So, what are the people's views on age play? Where do you stand?
As someone who used to be in the sex work, age play for me has always been sexual because of the violence requests. So for me, age play has always been very stigmatized that displays aggression and caregiver dynamics. So I think that's for myself, I wouldn't put the two together, but I know others that do.
I tend to use caregiver because I've introduced myself. I'm a daddy. It doesn't have to be a daddy dog. Whereas the girl is a daddy dog and all the fermentation we can generate. Not perfectly accepted. You don't have to be male to be a daddy. You could have in the days about role play. You might be non-binary. You might actually have solid gender identity, but you want to play the opposite. This is about exploring and learning and finding a mutual headspace that works and benefits everyone. That's where the fun is. So, remind myself. Probably more in the daddy space than somewhere else. I once went to an age play lunch and I talked about 3 daddies. The sex daddy, the sugar daddy, and the daddy dog. And it's important because if you're attractive young ladies, let's say, and you get unsolicited message saying you want to be a daddy, you might want to give you a credit card number. I don't want to look at it. You might be and for me, being a daddy dog, even when it plays sexual, isn't really sex. Sex happens. Just what I like. I can't know. I don't think they go into my headspace. I think it's just I'm still learning myself. But that's one of the things. I've got writing that I really should post to But it's kind of the messages I get is they're looking for a daddy warlocks rather than a daddy dog. They're like, nothing wrong with
The same way that, well, I say we as little tools, I'm talking about myself, getting into like little headstates, to get into returning headstates.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think sometimes a lot of things too focus on the bottom side and people are quite surprised. And again, I was really lucky, so I learned about dom drop being an actual thing. And the second year the time, you go, oh, yeah, that's exactly what happened. And you know, DOMs can say for it. They're there for a reason. And I have said to them, ironically, you nearly always not trying to see me. Let's just now what else on terminology? Are there any other acronyms that people come across terms? Oh, I missed the obvious. Pigs. The answer to that is so, generic term that big spoon. They're not necessarily parental figure. Your daddy, mummy, your uncle, sister. My personal experience uncles sometimes use more informal play relationship, but I'm a permanent neighbour with two uncles as well. And I consider them full notions relationships, very common with consent and suspicions and behaviours associated. You can switch. All the combinations I already said, just before this with stuff. Some of the most entertaining scenes I've participated in have actually involved businesses pops because it just adds a whole new thing. And I think this is what gets me. I was born kinky. Things really, really nice. I was just slow in some respects. But I've always been a masochist. In sadism, coming to terms with sadism in me, it's always been a harder journey, a harder thing to come to terms with. That involved aspect. Frames of perfect. This is really illustrated. I'm going to hurt my frame, my character is always got to be sense of growth. Because my life, I would act as what Karen should be. In my eyes, that's what I would be. And it's worth talking about some of the reasons. I'm a bad upbringing. My parents split up. Nothing really, really terrible. But it's probably fair to say that how I perceive my parents is not how I would want to deliver growth and nurture to someone I care. And I'm a father as well as a mother. And being a daddy helps me explore some of that and work around some of my ideas, some of my approaches. But sometimes people get here for less happy reasons. Your way of dealing with those, addressing those, certainly bad you. Principles are in it because it gives them something to have an experience or to lack in their past. It gives what makes the dynamic relationship around relationships especially so valuable. I think. One other thing, just disambiguate, age play, headspace, it's about age regression. There is also this long-term dissociative identity disorder. People respond to this. And I love Night Shyamalan films intensely, including this, but it does take some creative criticism. That's just almost always when you dissociate, it's called an alter, is to a safe alternative identity. And again, you have dissociative identity disorder and individuality. Your dissociative identity disorder, alters, are distinct and different from material difference. Again, it's not something that needs to be conflated together. They are very fortunate to have a close friend. Yes.
I was going to say I am a little who has dissociative identity disorder, and my partner says when I'm in little spaces, very much like talking to me on a regular basis, I have the understanding of the average 21-year-old. But when talking to my older Ellie, who is 4 years old, I believe the words he used were she was over asked for her elbow and she's very biting. Very different from me, so
Yeah, in fact,
I think it's really important as well to talk about sort of consent with DID and that, you know, we talk about that all the time and all that. There's a real big, sorry, and I don't mean to talk, but there's a real big difference between DID and dissociative identity disorder and dehumanisation and depersonalisation. And for anybody who was in my previous workshop, I think I just give an example of that. However, it's not always about going to somewhere comfortable and positive when you suffer from dehumanisation, and that happens a lot in BDSM. So I think all I'll say is there's a really good writing about consent in Littles, and I think it was posted by the Think Sheet only last week or the week before, and it is about how do we gain consent in relationships that have age play as their basis, but particularly when you do have DID, because DID is progression to that age. So obviously we cannot gain consent from someone who is in a space of a minor person. So I just thought.
yeah, no, and that's, I mean, I found out without being told, this person had dissociative identity disorder, when I met her alter, because I reacted, I could see it was a go out space, just treated me against it. So the next day, she came out to me, and I liked that actually being part of the caregiver dimension. And I think I dealt with that better than I would have. I didn't have more understanding.
I think absolutely, we as part of the scene and as a community have a real understanding of people who experience DID than perhaps other people do. But what I will say is that I don't necessarily think it also is a headspace.
No, it is.
And if you are then obviously playing with someone and you meet somebody new and there is a presence of an alter, then for me personally that scene needs to stop and we need to establish a relationship with that alter, consent with that alter before we then play. And I think that's the danger, that we don't differentiate between headspace and a little space and the presence of an alter, because those two things are really different.
It is really important. It applies to the wider community. You touch on it in your workshops.
Yeah.
It's like you have to have grown-up, out-of-scene conversations to gain consent. Someone who's a little threat play And you ask them if they want something. They're all at the beginning. You've done some hard play. That's probably not the time to negotiate these hours and limits. And for me, it's doubly unacceptable in care and there's always room for mistakes to learn. I've made some, it's important to move on. This is part of the balance of coming to workshops and learning. And you've been in the scene for 15 years, you can always learn different viewpoints. Things always change, things evolve. Terminology moves on. I think I signposted earlier, it'd be really interesting is spanking another life becomes socially unacceptable. To see if it was more geeky or less geeky, I don't know.
In fact, since you brought that one up, the traditional CP scene has often been linked to CP at schools. That has not occurred for 30 years, and yet you're still finding younger people, 18, 19, 20, massively into spanking. So where it's coming from is a mystery to me, but yeah.
Yeah, no. And I think it's just something, must be something inherent in your body.
There's a little bit of research as to why people are into spanking. It's because we've all been raised with the idea that spanking is a big no-no, it's big forbidden. Which means that it sparks a lot more dopamine when it hits.
Make something that's more defined.
Yeah. I've also heard that kids are hereditary. Yes. If our parents are into it, it's trauma.
Yeah, I think my dad said something about that.
I've already had those conversations and I've been traumatized by them.
My mum accused me of being a dog.
I found out about lamb because my mom's friend was selling it for years. So my mom tagged me in lamb on Facebook.
The last one, one of the stallholders brought their mum out. So, yes, there probably is. But I mean, the whole world of kink, there's loads of other diagrams of neurodiversity, chronic pain conditions, general geekiness, liking board games. These are all little breadcrumbs to someone that's not your kind of person.
The Venn diagram eventually just becomes a circle.
I think we're doing an actual lunch this week.
Yep, Friday night.
Yeah. I really wanted to go, but it just was such a busy week. I did have a threat somewhere, let's see if we can find it. This is why I didn't want to overplan. Yeah. Well, let's talk about spanking. The good thing for me about page play is it intersects pretty much the whole of it. Just because you like to progress and role play doesn't mean you're a soft slow or not into all kinds of things. It's compatible and intersects the whole spectrum, impact play, breath play, everything is possible. And possible. I struggle to think of something as mutually exclusive. Even things like pet play, those kind of dynamics, they intersect quite regularly. With terminology around ops, it's very, very simple, integrated dynamic. A spectrum of spectrum. That's what it is. So, what do you think? Does anyone have any opinions on what difference or differences between, just say, a little and a soft right? I'm not saying I want to think this soft, but just imagine famous term, stereotypical DS sub and stereotypical little.
We'd ask different things from each of them. So submissive, you would be like, oh, can you make me a drink? Whereas being a little, you would be the one making the little drink.
And this is another view of like a caregiver dynamic. Being a daddy dog, it's not like the sense of it. It's on one hand, yes, you're in charge. On the other hand, you might find yourself being a sweetie dispenser, the stuff we tax in. It's a different. One of the things I always find interesting, the point I make, I think the words I phrase, without submission, domination is do to someone, so you can do with someone. That's why we have all these consent models and encourage communication. Caregiving dynamic is exactly that. It's slightly different process. I think it's a really good example. Without any particular facts in mind, what my other saying is everyone's practicing. And yeah, probably more so within the category. And that's part of where the fun is. It's part of the role play, children practice. Babies, they just do what they want. And that's part of freeing headspace you get.
I think part of it is about the value, isn't it, that underpins the dynamic. So that's really interesting. So we're talking about, so for example, passivity is a really good one. So for somebody who's a submissive, their value might be about service and the doing and the giving and the providing. And in actual fact, that's quite an active role. But a little, you know, it's funny. I'm an age administration, and you are having care provided to you, so that can be quite passive. It can almost look the other way. It can look like, you know, Daddy is the one in service to me because he's the one looking after me and caring for me, and it's what value underpins that dynamic. Because I joke quite often that some DS is just paternalistic DS was acceptable a number of years ago, where Daddy and Little maybe wasn't, and what was the real difference. But I guess it's about what value underpins that. Does that make sense? So that passive and active role versus that drive to serve, that drive to care, drive to be looked after, that drive to be good. That's the overlap, isn't it? That drive to be a good sub, slave, pet, bitch, whatever, little. That's the interest. That's the overlap, and then everything else is how that is underpinned.
Yeah, and you can flip it as well. It's like the fun I get from being a daddy dog is when my little goes, "Can I have that?" We anticipated that. It's like it's almost practically off. But it can be, depends how it's addressed. It's me. For me, I like being able to understand and identify, truly connect and anticipate someone's needs. And it doesn't mean I'm a service dog. And again, I have gone the other way. I'll tell you to go juice and not understand and control that. It's all part of the fun. And one of the things I've noticed, even within the last probably 3 or 4 years, there seems to age play the non-trivial version, especially, seems to be more acceptable. And the question for the floor: why? Do you think there's any reason, societal, environmental reasons, why a little headspace might be more attractive than perhaps it was previously?
Which one? Melanie Martinez.
Sorry?
Melanie Martinez. I'm not even joking.
No, you're right.
It just exposed a lot of people to the ideas of this. There's a more, CLG themes, and I never actually looked at any of the actual notes that there are. Yeah, it's just so well known that, maybe classify a lot of this, just really sort of making it very mainstream in a manner.
So that's improving the acceptability.
Social media has also improved the accessibility of content that is appealed to littles. Therefore, certain things like TikTok, people dopamine, everyone seems to find themselves with their people. As well as this, a lot of advertisements seem to appeal to the inner child, encouraging us to let our hair down, to go to adult soft play centres. I mean, there's one in Hull that has one of the slushies that I go to quite regularly. Like, if that doesn't show that the society is more accepting, that people get into a slightly going headspace, I don't know what does.
And I think it's with that is that it's accepting of the younger headspace, you're accepting of the little, not the daddy, essentially. Like, and I think that's still very much a thing where it's like.
There is still a lot of stigma in caregivers.
Yeah, and with that, I have a question, I guess, which is, what do you do if there's not really a caregiver in the situation? Like, that isn't really the dynamic that you play with, like, it's mostly just people in a little headspace together.
Right, and just make sure I answer this without too much agenda. You do technically sell stuff, but yes. So at the end of the day, it's role play. Even I do it as a top. I can't always be with my partner within our age play dynamic. I have a stuff that is sort of with my partner. But that can also be a way of acting out things. If you want to experiment with rope, some thinner cords, brilliant stuff is shibari. You can role play. You can age regress and play with your stuff. One of the play activities that you do when you're young is you actually pretend to be a parent. So conversely, you can age play with a younger person and play an older person, and it's surprisingly fun. I won't even embarrass people with the show of hands, but probably quite a few people in this that have told us stuff is what to do. People are happy. But for me, I think there's a few kind of overarching themes. When I was young, it would be socially acceptable for my parents to play computer games. Just be a bit weird. We were all grown up, and some of us are now the adults, at least the guys in the world. And isn't it? Everyone plays computer games. Computer games no longer a thing for kids, a thing for boys. Thank God, people play computer games. And that is play, I think.
Yes, absolutely. And just before it sort of moves into the heart, but you were hitting on it quite well there. Nostalgia, for one, seems to be a massive factor. I mean, just like how we mentioned earlier with Care Bears or Go. I mean, they were just leaving popularity when I was old enough to know what I'm watching.
Yeah.
And now they're coming back in. Well, they've come back in and now several times already. Like 90s making a really big comeback at the moment, all that sort of thing. And I think certainly within the last 3 years, with the wonderful status quo that we've been in, escapism has been much more acceptable, but almost sort of recommended and advertised, you know, like raw with a frequency situation. It's okay if you want to go out and if you want to get into it. When previously it was not like, you know, if you do that, okay, but it's obviously what advocates now, you do what makes you feel okay, providing that doesn't look nice enough. And that seems to be pushed a lot more forward to the forefront since the wonderful status quo with which we've been in.
No, and I think there's wider things, and I think because we're in a more connected society to play with that little chestnut, and I think because the world is a lot more complicated, it is really, really, and this is why computer games and playing in general and more social acceptable. And I think genuinely has a place. And to get the labels or baggage, this is what advice people different stage in that kind of thing. It's like if you're worried about the labels, you choose labels. They don't own you while you are. But recognize the good and the benefit. It's growing you, growing others. It's healthy. And that really is how I try to train founders and my caregivers. But anyway, there has to be growth there. And it's not about playing right and wrong. It's like you see that again. I'm not daddy doll in the bedroom. I am daddy doll. That's what I do. What I'm buzzing. Seeing people grow and seeing happy faces. That's why it's. I'm not being installed on there. One of the buzzes I get. It doesn't matter whose stall it's at, because you see these happy faces, people finding the thing. Because you can't go forwards anymore anyway. You can't just go to the shops and get that. And yeah, you might be able to order it on eBay or Etsy or whatever, or write in the post. It might not be quite what you thought you would get to. So there's a lot of value in coming to places like this and seeing your people and understanding you are part of it. And obviously there's all the online stuff that supports it.
Productivity plays a big part, and so it's really interesting. So there's loads of studies about our culture, our society is obsessed with productivity. It's one of the drives behind it. And there's loads of studies at the moment about play and productivity. So it's all these corporate workplaces, like you talk about this, like soft plays for adults with focus studies. There's all these corporate workplaces now that have got slides and ball pits as their place where their employees go and spend their breaks and downtimes. And I think the shift, really, the cultural shift, is about how important it is to look after ourselves and look after our mental health. So, and with that, we go to spas now, we do this now, we do, whereas in a generation ago, it wasn't thought important to look after ourselves in the same way. And I think this is part of that, because for a lot of us, what we're talking about is this is self-care, isn't it? You know, this dynamic, this relationship we share with each other is our release, it's our downtime, it's our, but I think partly why it's socially acceptable now is just because it's more socially acceptable to be somebody who has a degree of freedom. You know, look at all the Disney films that are crossover between adult and children now. So I'm blaming the corporate world of Google for some of this. Silicon Valley is responsible for part of it.
Really interesting. Is there any people have any questions? Anything we feel that I should address? We should address it all.
Not so much of a question, more something, and I agree finally with what you were saying on the growth and it dawned on me in previous work as well. I can't quote the quote from really thought of that, but I realised a while ago, and I sort of really echoed it in these words that we can't really understand ourselves without interacting with other people. We can have an idea of what we are and what we are about, but that's all of here. It's only when we interact with others and we see people who have the same interests or have some of the same interests, because different nuances in it, that sort of how we discover ourselves and work out what we are, what we want to be, sort of how what our sort of self-value is and where we want to go with it.
You know the true one of my pet theories of society is actually a neural network, as such, which is why kink is so much so important, because it acts as the grit and the counterpoint in some respects, because if there wasn't something that was kinky, society are standing. Okay. But it is, we interact, we are all social animals by nature. And again, within the caregiver dynamic, what I like is think of how many terms in the caregiver dynamic are extended family. The only one that comes close, I think, is pet crime. And the DS, it's like, the reason that you see in a pack, in a house, because there isn't that strong terminology. But a DS family can be brought and by systems. One of one of my close friends who's on that side journey, I call him Big Daddy. And that's not the son. We are, that is in common. Such a beautiful person. And he almost comes from a pure headspace. So it's like, it blew my mind the first time I saw him sleep happen. So bad. What you did. But this, I think, is a really, really strong community. It's a good framework, being a support. I just wish we could get rid of some of the baggage. The one thing I will say, I know consent knowledge, but respect, mutual respect for the wider community. I'm a little bit sad. I don't know whether I'm more sensitive, but I've seen more kinky rows on the interwebs recently, and it doesn't make me happy. It doesn't make me happy. Some of the things that I read from experienced people you see. And for me, I interpret everyone through how I perceive their intent. So if someone posts something like, "Oh, you're completely wrong, everything you say is wrong," but then another person that they're accusing posts some more nuanced answer. It's like, I'll take on board what you're saying. This is what I think. I want to understand it a bit further. It's pretty easy for me to decide who the good guy, who the bad guy is in that discussion. And it just astonishes me how many people and the way they address me. I think this really plays in. And again, it's why I felt at home at Manchester for my first visit as a person. Mine was a store, because of its inclusivity. So kink shaming is not okay. I must admit, I can do quite big shows, but it is type of kink show. But I only try and do it illustratively. There is a lot of kink shows, which is not but I don't get, just because something is nothing, I'm not an advocate. I don't wear a knife or a nappy. It doesn't hurt me if someone else does. And they wear them for all kinds of different reasons. Just like really, really tried it. It was like, okay, yeah, not for me. Curious guy. Look, I don't get why people think it's okay to pile on things like that's just weird. If you're kinky already, or something else weird, where are you coming from? What's your agenda? Why are you saying? Are you just parroting something you think you should say? Or is there an actual basis for it? If things are happening within a framework of mutual consent, it is okay, in my view. And I, for one, I'm happy to say that caregivers are okay, why it does seem to get more acceptance. It was my very first manager he attended with customer, and it was gospel speak. And I almost fell off his chair when he mentioned that business. I think it was just a general talk as well. It's his first time having engaged in different aspects of it. I've never heard anyone say, we used to have to bring up places and say, right, my sub is going to be dressed a bit more like this than not in black. Is that okay? There is no uniform. There are other colours than red and black. But conversely, just because you're little doesn't mean you have to wear hats. Doesn't mean that you're an adult age. Doesn't mean you have to wear either. Doesn't mean you have to do any of those things. It's something first. And it's something we wear ourselves.
I mean, to add a point to that, it's great that it's more acceptable and even into wider society, because 12 years ago, if someone called someone daddy in a fetish club, about 15% of the other people in the room would be going to the management going, do we need to call social services? I mean, there was that much misunderstanding about the simple word. And it was a real problem for a lot of people. So I'm glad it's changed, because it fundamentally, to me, is no different to any other kink. I can be accepting of it. I don't necessarily need to engage in it.
Yeah, and the thing is, it does intersect. And just because I'm a daddy, doesn't mean that's the only top headspace I have. I do have headspaces. It's just unfortunate. They're pretty much lifestyle caregiver. So that's where I live most of my time. Thank you very, very much for your attention. People enjoy the colour again? Does anyone want to show off what the colour? Good work. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.